These two guys have Minnesota sports flowing in their veins. Mackie and Judd on SKOR North and SKORNorth.com.
Reckless speculation.
Reckless speculation.
Happy Reckless Speculation Thursday, friends, to all who celebrate. It's our friend Darren Doogie Wolfson from the 5 Eyewitness News Sports Department, and you can find him on this podcast, Minnesota Sports with Mackie and Judd, the SKOR North YouTube channel every Tuesday and Thursday. He also has a Scoop podcast feed where you can find his interviews throughout the weeks and months. And gentlemen, it is a glorious, glorious day. Here comes Doogie. Welcome him in.
Hello, our first Reckless Speculation Thursday of 2024. Now, I can't wish you guys a Happy New Year, right? Larry David,
You're
Curb Your
past the statute
Enthusiasm.
of limitations, yes.
It's 3 days, Declan?
Yes, I think
So
January
I had
3rd
through
is
yesterday, but now today, January 4th, I cannot wish you guys a Happy New Year. But it is still a day to celebrate because it's our first Reckless Speculation Thursday of 2024.
Some guy in the hallway yesterday wished me a Happy New Year. I'd never met before. It was just his greeting was Happy New Year. And I was like, I don't know. It's we don't know each other. And it's January 3rd. A little questionable.
January 3rd, it's a fine walk-by thing. Like, he has no idea your name, and you don't know his name, and nor should you. It's not important.
We both hit the button.
I feel like a January 3rd.
When's the new season start?
next
Sooner.
month.
Yeah.
Next month.
But this is it. He claims this will be at this time. No more. I cannot wait.
Oh my gosh.
Dex are
Okay,
very excited.
let's talk some Vikings here. Let's put our speculation hats on here, and we can get into any sort of information Doogie has and what have you. But here's what I want to know: the Steelers. There's some buzz now that like Russell Wilson's going to go somewhere else. I saw talking heads this morning speculating on Russell Wilson to Steelers. Atlanta has an opening. There's the Patriots are probably looking for a quarterback and a coach maybe. So you're
Have
going
you
to have
seen the Russell Wilson Vikings speculation?
Well,
I had somebody
a
text
little.
me at 11:30 last night asking me if this Russell Wilson Vikings team is legit.
What steam are you talking about? Because I see
think
people on
the
Twitter.
steam is there is one of many betting sites making odds putting the Vikings near the top.
Yep.
So it
Came out
is
last week.
pure speculation. There is zero legitimacy connecting the Vikings, especially after they saw him in person on November 19th. There is zero legitimacy, actual connection, Egan to Russell Wilson. It is a betting site, one of many betting sites speculating, developing these odds, saying that the Vikings are a logical landing spot.
I love Thursdays and reckless speculation. And 2024 is going to be a year at which we blow the top off of reckless speculation.
It's going to be.
But even I struggle with Kevin O'Connell electing to switch from Kirk to Russell Wilson when it's such a logical step that if you're going to go to a new quarterback, you're going to draft one. And I understand Russell Wilson has been treated poorly by Sean Payton and the Broncos. But all that being said, we've watched him play, right? This would literally, in my opinion, be Donovan McNabb Vikings 2.0.
Well, it is an interesting comp. A guy that was once one of the best quarterbacks in the league that's in his 30s and
Right.
And I'll say this about Sean Payton and Kevin O'Connell are very opposite personalities, but they have one thing very much in common. They want their quarterback to sit in the pocket and throw on schedule. And if they get off schedule, if they can't make the reads, if they abort mission before it's time, then they get mad. And Sean Payton gets a little more mad as you saw him lighting up Russell Wilson. But let me throw this question to Doogie. And you could, if you want to include Russell Wilson, by the way, has offset language in his contract. So he's probably going to sign somewhere for cheap, and the Broncos are going to be on the hook for a big chunk. So the question would be more about if you could get Russ for $5 million or something. But my question to you is, how do you think the Kirk Cousins discussions and path are gonna look in the next 3 months? Do you think the Vikings and Kirk Cousins are probably talking in the next couple of weeks? Do you think Kirk and his representatives want to get into a bidding war with 4 other teams? How do you think that road looks the next 3 months with the Vikings and Kirk Cousins?
Well, I think there'll be some decompressing taking place throughout this month. Let's presume the season ends on Sunday, doesn't go beyond Sunday, that the Vikings don't somehow miraculously make the playoffs. So season ends Sunday. I think both parties will end up decompressing for a while. Things will ramp up dialogue-wise sometime in February. Mid-February makes sense. Then they will all convene in Indianapolis. The Combine hasn't moved locations, right? It's still in Indianapolis.
Yep.
I know there was some chatter at some point of moving locations, but the 2024 NFL Draft Combine, which will begin at some point in late February, usually extends into that first week of March. So everybody league-wise, Mike McCartney, who is Kirk Cousins' agent, certainly everybody from the Vikings front office will be in Indianapolis. So they then can pick up talks in person, and we'll get close to that March 13th deadline, which to me is legit based on what we laid out on Tuesday, to see if they can hammer out a deal. I do think the Vikings will have a price point that they're not willing to exceed some price point. I don't know exactly what that price point is. I'll be digging over the next handful of weeks. Maybe I'll find out. Maybe I won't. But I do think there is a price point that the Vikings will not exceed, but that there is going to be plenty of interest in re-signing Kirk Cousins.
Okay, let's back up for a second here, because I guess my question is this. How much do we think the Achilles injury has changed things? Because, you know, when Kirk Cousins wanted to most definitely be extended last March, and they couldn't agree, which is fine. But I remember asking Kirk then in one of the off-season press conference camps he did about, you know, I think it was in April or May. I said, have there been further discussions? It was May. And he said, no. He said, now that this is past, we're going to get through the season. My sense on that was, and Dukes, I think you're right. I think they will definitely talk in February before the league year arrives. But my sense was they also wanted to at least get to the Combine where teams will express interest, where they'll have a much better idea of the landscape of Kirk's future potentially elsewhere. They don't need to get to the start of the new league year in March. They need to get to the Combine. So how much do we think the Achilles has changed that? Because I'm not sure it's changed it as much as we think. And look, if the Vikings come off the top rope, yeah, I think Cousins is back. But I think that there's also a very good chance that if they waited this long, that they are at least going to find out what the price of poker is going to be elsewhere besides just with the Vikings.
So what you're suggesting is, even if he hadn't torn his Achilles, okay, so he's looking at, you know, $40 million plus per year, that you're saying now with the torn Achilles that maybe the contract looks comparable? Is that what you're alluding to, Judd?
I'm alluding
that some team is going to blow him out of the water regardless, that the Achilles really isn't that much of a hindrance when it comes to negotiations?
I'm alluding to the fact that I think that they want to get to the Combine to wait and see on that very question.
Well, sure. Well, and, you know, I mean, you heard Chris Collinsworth on Sunday night alluding to Kirk Cousins' plans on running in February. You know, that's strategic, right? That he wants to show teams that he is moving just fine. Now, we know that he's not using his legs anyway, that he's a pocket passer, right? So, you know, to me, the Achilles was never any sort of death sentence, right? But he wants to show that, hey, the recovery is going really well. So strategically, there will be video, maybe on, you know, one of his social media platforms sometime in February of him running. That is the next progression in his rehab. But sure, yes, the Vikings will be taking the temperature in Indianapolis, trying to figure out, okay, will the Atlanta Falcons offer him $44 million a year? That we can't touch that sort of number. Maybe there's another team, right? But to me, the Falcons are a logical landing spot. There are others, but that would be one I would keep an eye on, right? So I'm just saying, I think there is a price point. I don't know what that price point is, Judd, right? So, like, what's the number that the Vikings won't exceed, and thus Kirk Cousins is going to leave come, you know, second or third week of March?
Yeah, the more I think about this too, with all the other options out there, and this is what I was getting at to start the show too, I guess, is the Steelers are out there. There's other teams. If the Vikings are kind of like, we want you back, kind of a bridge situation, we might draft Michael Penix. I think if you're Kirk and there's other options and suitors out there, and a couple of them might just unequivocally say, you are our guy for the next 2 years, and we aren't drafting a quarterback in the first round this year, that's going to be appealing to him, right? I want to know, am I the starter for the next couple of years? The Vikings might not be able to offer that assurance. So that's the first thing. The second thing is, if you're the Vikings and you decide, okay, you know what, we are going to commit to Kirk Cousins again because, dang it, we love the way he was playing. He took his shirt off and riled up the crowd, and people love him, and he's a nice guy, and we're going to give him the 2 years. We're going to draft defense, and we're going to push forward. He's been here for 6 years. They haven't made the playoffs in back-to-back years in his time here. They have one playoff win, and it was back in 2019-20, January 2020. And now some people are going to argue, well, wait a second, they were getting hot when he got injured, but that was still a long road to making the playoffs. Maybe they get the extra win. But can you convince me if they commit, all right, we're not drafting a quarterback, 2 years of Kirk Cousins, can you convince me that things are going to be different than they have been the last 6 years?
No, I mean, I think that they're stuck in middle purgatory. That if Cousins is back, they certainly would be competitive in 2024. We're talking about another 8, 9, 10-ish win type season, right? That, yes, if a couple things go their way, that they make the playoffs. But you look at the landscape of the division, is there a logical pathway to winning the division? We can have that debate. Now, I will tell you, I think the marriage with KOC, right? So 13 wins a year ago. Yes, losing the first round, but 13 wins. I think they make the playoffs if he stays healthy, Phil. I think they still beat Atlanta. They beat New Orleans, probably win the Denver game, probably win the Chicago game. But I think they would have made it. Not division champs, but 6 seed, 7 seed. But if your ceiling is first round playoff loss, what's the point? But I'm just telling you, the Wilfs, I need evidence that they're willing to say, you know what? Let's not do this. Let's not pay him. Let's take a step backward. If in 2024 we're, a 4-win, 5-win type roster, maybe exceed expectations, but entering the year, it just doesn't look that good right on paper. I need that evidence, Phil. I really do. I just haven't heard it, seen it going back decades now with the Wilfs in charge.
You also, because you kind of slipped in the old, are they willing to take a step back thing? And that's another thing I would challenge the Wilfs and anyone else having this conversation on.
Well, sure, but the time to do that was when they made the transition, right? Zimmer out, Spielman out. That was the ideal time, right? If you were going to hit the reset button, wasn't that the time?
But that's not what I'm saying. I'm pushing back at the notion that drafting a quarterback is a guaranteed step back. It was a step forward for the Texans. If you hit on the right guy, this is where we're all stuck again in Christian Ponder, Tavares Jackson, Teddy Bridgewater blew his knee out. We think, based on the history of this franchise and quarterbacks in the draft, we think draft a quarterback means they're probably going to be crappy and the team's probably going to win 5 or 6 games. And look around the league. There's a lot of guys and a lot of teams that draft a quarterback and they're really good still, or they take a step forward because they finally found the guy, right?
I'm not dismissing that, right? I mean, that's why, to me, there's a price point. So, if Kirk is not willing to play poker on that price point, Kirk is going to be elsewhere, then yes. I mean, I think there's a chance Kirk is back and they draft a quarterback. I've laid that out, right? Draft a quarterback very high. But there's also a chance that, okay, Kirk thinks or knows, right, through his representation, through the scuttlebutt at the combine, the tampering that takes place, that, okay, the Vikings are willing to do this, but the Falcons or the Steelers or you name whoever it is, they're willing to exceed that number. I'm still in a finite amount of time to maximize my earning potential. I'm going to take the biggest payday. As much as I like it there in Minnesota, I am leaving for the biggest paycheck. So I'm not dismissing that. Then you draft a quarterback, likely in that scenario, first round. That guy starts from day one. And yeah, maybe it is C.J. Stroud-esque or something along those lines where, yeah, you can make a run when you still have Justin Jefferson, Jordan Addison. You have, to me, you wouldn't say it coming off Sunday, right? But a productive offensive line. You certainly feel really good, especially when Brian O'Neill is healthy. The ankle was bothering him on Sunday. But when you have O'Neill, Darrisaw, right, you feel good about those tackles. You feel really good about the offense. And with Brian Flores likely back, I just think with the pending litigation, it's going to be really hard for him to get a head coaching job. So I think Flores is back in 2024 this year, right? So you feel good with him running the defense. You make some tweaks. I think you re-signed Danielle Hunter, some other things that, sure, you don't need to take a step back. I'm with you, Phil. I'm not dismissing that idea, not at all.
All right. I would like to recklessly speculate about an act in 2 parts, you guys, because I think I've given this a ton of thought. We talked about the fact that the voiding and the void years in Kirk's contract basically give him a hammer, because as you said, your friend Joel Corey said that if this thing goes into the league year and Kirk comes back here, then everything counts, including the dead cap hit and Dukes, that becomes a huge problem. In fact, I don't think that's a doable problem. So here's where the Vikings, I think, need to take a stand. And this is where it's an act in two parts. It is free agency in the draft, but it's very clearly defined, I think, here. If you think about this, okay? You go to the combine where you always sit down with agents for guys that you're interested in, and probably more importantly, your own guys that are about to hit the market. You go to the combine and you basically set up a day where you meet with Kirk Cousins' agent, Mike McCartney, and with Danielle Hunter's agent. And you say, okay, guys, Justin Jefferson's re-signing here. And let's forget this hogwash about, well, he might not he ain't playing in the 5th-year option and taking a chance of being hurt. Okay, so Jefferson's a given. I think that's one of the silliest things I've heard. But what you say is,
that? Yeah, I mean, I see them giving Justin Jefferson a monster contract.
Fans are very concerned about something they shouldn't be. But anyway, what you can say is, hey, we have only so much to spend. And Kirk, or in this case, Mike McCartney, you know damn well that we're not going to sign Kirk 1 second after 2 p.m. Central Time on March 13th, because we ain't paying all of that and void years. But we have X amount to spend, and this is what we will give you. You say the same thing to the Hunter camp. And if the Kirk camp's like, oh, no, we want to explore things way more, we can't know. You
Which
say,
they
okay.
should. They should.
Yes. But then you say, here's your deadline today to make this decision, or here is your deadline, before March 13th. And same thing for the Hunter camp. We need to know, because then the act in the second part to me becomes crystal clear. It's the draft, right? So like now, if your deadline's March 1st and Kirk's camp is like, oh no, we are exploring everything, and Hunter's camp is like, oh hell, we'll sign. Then you say, okay, that's great. We now are going to draft a quarterback. And to the conversation that we've had before, depending on if you lose to the Lions, you could very possibly say, we're going to try and move up more and draft a quarterback that we like more than, let's say, at the 10th pick. So I actually think you're just going to have to, if you're Kwesi, if you're the Wilfs, if you're Kevin O'Connell, you're going to have cojones here, but you've got to draw some deadlines, because the worst thing that you can do is allow, for instance, the Kirk Cousins camp to dictate what your move is and to potentially screw you. You have to be the aggressor here. And I don't think that's being a jerk. I think it's being realistic, and it now gives you a clear-cut path. Right or wrong, it gives you a clear-cut path.
I get the hard deadline on Kirk. Why on Danielle?
Because I want to know where I'm going to spend my money.
Okay, but he wants to hit free agency and talk to other teams.
Yeah. No,
so
I know.
You're not going to strong arm Danielle into not talking to the Jaguars.
Yeah, I don't think you're strong arming Danielle. Exactly.
Well, I would like to know.
I mean, I could see Danielle back here after March 13th, I guess is what I'm getting at.
Yeah, that's a possibility. But my only point here is I think you can create clarity if you do it the right way. Especially with Kirk, and therefore your quarterback going forward. I think that's the most important thing to me.
Well, yeah, I mean, I get where you're coming from. I don't know if it's necessarily cojones. I mean, to me, it's what you have to do, right? Like, you're in the GM chair. You need to have clarity, right? Yeah. So I don't think it's about having cojones. It's about Kwesi doing his job, which I fully expect him to do, right? You need to have that clarity, right? So I understand it on Kirk. I don't think you're necessarily playing hardball with Danielle, though. I really don't.
Yeah, that's a
I
Danielle.
mean, I can't stress enough. He loves it here.
Right.
Brian Flores thinks the world of him. I'm telling you, the money is in the ballpark, and I get it. Like that second contract, that was a mistake. Danielle could have cashed out way more so, right? So maybe he's trying to make up for the lack of, earning power there. I mean, he made plenty, but he could have made so much more with that second contract, right? But if it's in the ballpark, whatever that is, top 7 type pass rusher type money, that he will be back, that he really, really likes it here, that they really, really like him.
Mm-hmm. Well, let's speculate on one of the biggest reasons why he might come back. I just opened up a CBS Sports article here that listed the top head coaching candidates for this year's cycle. And Vic Fangio pops up on the list, and Steve Spagnuolo, he was the Rams head coach from like 12 years ago.
Are you serious?
He's back on the list. Yeah. Dan Quinn. Jim Schwartz, who's doing a great job as the Browns defensive coordinator, is back on a list of candidates. There's obviously the coordinators we've talked about with Detroit. Brian Flores is the number 1 name on this list on CBSSports.com. the defense has dropped off a little. Maybe it's not the worst thing that the defense has dropped off a little at the end. I don't think that would be like the final straw. I'm like, you know what? We really loved the 10 hours we spent with you today, Mr. Flores, but your defense got a little shaky there in week 17, so we're probably not going to hire you. But I do wonder, I guess, what is the percentage chance that he is back as defensive coordinator for one more year with the Vikings? It would be nice to have him back, I think.
Yeah, I mean, the elephant in the room is the pending litigation, right? I mean, without the pending litigation, I mean, he's got a compelling case, right? I mean, like, to me, at some point, Brian Flores is going to be a head coach again. I don't necessarily think it'll be this coaching cycle, though. I think there's a better chance he's back with the Vikings in 24 versus being a head coach somewhere else.
Yeah.
And I think part of the problem, too, is, one, you're exactly right. You're suing Roger Goodell, basically. So that's going to make it tough. Because
I mean, there was a part of me a couple weeks ago that thought maybe the new ownership group in Washington wouldn't give a bleep.
Club.
Now, you could, and you could also make the case that they're new, like they're not going to rock the boat, right? But there was a part of me that thought maybe Washington. But the more I think about it, Ron Rivera, defensive background, they're going to go with an offensive coach, right?
That's what I was going
Washington.
to say is you guys, and
quarterback.
I think we did this a couple of weeks ago, but look at the jobs that we expect, unless there's a big surprise. Look at the jobs that we expect to be open in the coaching cycle, and you tell me, where does Brian Flores like a good fit? Like the Patriots, but Belichick was a defensive guy. And I think the Patriots are going to draft a quarterback, and I think that, the hires du jour right now are offensive guys, right?
I actually think Chargers would be a good fit, but they're moving off a defensive guy. Jim Harbaugh is probably their number one target, right?
And I think they want a guy that Herbert can work with Justin Herbert, don't you?
I mean, Herbert's been doing fine. The defense has been the biggest problem in San Diego, in LA with the Chargers. Right. Herbert's largely one of the best quarterbacks in the league. I think, to the point though, Flores is going to probably need a ready-made. I doubt if you're going to hire him and then draft a quarterback. Washington's a good example. They might draft there's a bunch of mocks that have Washington trading up to the number 1 to draft Caleb Williams. Do you put him with Brian Flores, seeing what happened with Tua?
Correct.
So he probably needs a veteran quarterback. So I agree with you guys on that front.
Let me throw out, though, I mean, don't you think there's going to be at least one surprise, right? Does Dallas go belly up in the playoffs? Or does the Dallas job open? Now, if it does, maybe they just promote Dan Quinn.
Yeah, I was going to say.
Or if Belichick is out in New England, do they somehow make some sort of trade for Mike Vrabel so Tennessee is then open? Now, I get it. I mean, Tennessee would have to be offered a lot. They're not just going to allow Mike to leave, right? But I would think the Patriots' number 1 choice would be the Titans coach, Mike Vrabel. So if Tennessee opened, although maybe you would go offense, right?
Will Levis is going to need some molding. It's kind of, there's not that many.
Yeah. But I still think the elephant in the room with him suing the league.
Yeah.
I just don't know if there's an ownership group willing to take a chance like that right now. Eventually, but not right now.
Hey, before we dig deeper into Doogie's scoop bag here, a shout out to our friends at Zero Res, helping you breathe a little bit more fresh air in your home. A deep clean would be great as part of your reset to start 2024. And Zero Res is here with the SKOR North special. Get 3 rooms Zero Resified starting at just $119. And this month, you can get $75 off when you get your air ducts cleaned as well.
Air ducts. Air ducts being cleaned is absolutely imperative.
Oh,
very important.
It's the best. You have to ask for the SKOR North special at ZeroResMinnesota.com or 9520-RES. Spell it forward or backward. It spells the same. Zero Res. All right, Dukes. Where else do you want to go here?
Speculation.
Well, you asked me after the opening game of the Wolves season in Toronto, is it time to push the panic button? I said no. I'm wondering if you're thinking the same thing right now after watching the game Monday in New York and last night at Target Center against New Orleans.
Panicking.
Are you about to ask me if it's time to push the panic button?
I'm not. I mean, I love how we've gone. Think about how far we've come watching this basketball team over 30 plus years. They just lost their first set of back-to-back games 2 months into the season.
Right.
And we're like, whoa, my God, the Timberwolves lost 2 games in a row. I get it. The way they're losing and even the way they were winning some of those games the last couple weeks, it's a funk. But it's December. They got off to a great start, and part of getting off to a great start is you can weather, a 3-week bad stretch against really good teams, by the way. So I'm not there yet. I'm still very level-headed and calm. I'm curious where you guys are at with this.
Well,
team.
Yeah, I mean, I'm right there with you. I mean, there's no reason to even call it any sort of really bad stretch. I agree, though. I mean, Chris Finch alluded to this with us at practice the other day, that, hey, if you go back a couple weeks, we're just playing average basketball. Like, that's the way he termed it. I'm paraphrasing slightly, but even Chris Finch said, and you can watch the games, right, with all the turnovers, the offensive issues they have, right? That, yeah, I mean, heck, you catch a break last Thursday with no Luka Doncic playing for Dallas, so maybe that game is different if Luka ends up playing, right? But just Finch said, hey, we haven't played good basketball going back a couple weeks, but they're 12 games into this 16-game stretch of playing all teams above 500, 7-5. So even after these 2 losses this week, 7-5. Now you finish 4 games on the road at Houston, at Dallas, at Orlando, at Boston. I think you end up winning at least 1, if not 2. So I think you end up having a winning record over this 16-game stretch. Phil, you're right. You build up enough equity, through November into early December, where I'm telling you, they would have to go very much belly up the rest of the year to not finish in the top 4 of the Western Conference. Now, if you want to say, hey, the ceiling should be championship, let's think about June, them hoisting the Larry O'Brien trophy. Fine, I'm okay with that when you're the number 1 seed this late into the season or almost at the 50% mark of the season. I think it's at least, okay to have that conversation. But to me, the ceiling is find a way to finally win a playoff series. It's been 20 years, right? 2004 was the last time. Find a way to win a playoff series. And we know even after last night, that was only their second home loss of the season. Target Center is a legit home court advantage. I was there for that Dallas game. The buzz is there. Find a way to have home court advantage in the first round. I'll take the Wolves' chances to win at least one playoff series. But I'll also tell you, New Orleans, when fully healthy, call me nuts. Maybe it's OKC, but New Orleans fully healthy might very well be the best team in the Western Conference.
Yeah.
So
certainly the deepest.
Yeah.
I mean, they can play. I mean, Trey Murphy didn't even play last night. I mean, they can go legit 13 guys deep.
So the difference here, you guys, is this though. So I get it. Okay, the Wolves have played 2 bad games, but the difference, in my opinion, and they might not be playing great basketball, but if you want them to make a playoff run, you want them to go through this. There is nothing that spells death in sports, in my opinion, than a season that doesn't have some true turbulence and adversity, because the playoffs cause that. Like, you can't avoid that. And you have to learn, a team like this has to learn how to weather a storm. I think we associate a storm with being horse bleep. And look, the Wolves were horse bleep for a long time, right? But that's not this team. Like, this team, we've seen it. They have talent. They are, when they're firing, they're good. You want this. Like, you don't want this for a month, but you want like a stretch where it's where they have to fix things, because I've seen this before in basketball, hockey, especially when you get to the playoffs and you've had just a smooth sail. You might have lost a couple games in a row here and there, but for the most part, there's been nothing wrong. What happens? You inevitably hit those problems in the playoffs. And now it's like, well, we didn't do this before. What do we do? So I would argue that this is actually a good thing and part of the maturation process. Doesn't mean it should last a month, but it does mean that if you got to April, playoffs started, and it's been like, there's nothing went wrong, that's a great way to get bounced, I think. So I actually appreciate this, and I'm going to assume this team is good enough to turn it around quickly enough where it doesn't become this massive problem.
Yeah, I mean, it's a good argument. I will say, though, so Chris Finch, and I think he is a brilliant offensive mind. I actually thought last night, shot selection-wise, looks-wise, I thought it was decent. Like, they missed. It's a make-or-miss sport, right? Last night, I liked a lot of the shots they took. They just didn't make them. But you go back a few weeks, even overall. Like, Phil, I don't know if you have net rating handy or even offensive rating. I mean, where are they offensive rating-wise?
Outside the
16th,
20th.
17th, 18th in the league?
Like 19th or 20th, I'm pretty sure.
19th or 20th. Okay, so net rating-wise,
when Ant
that puts them below the top 3 or 4.
On offense, when Ant is on the court, it's a top 10 offensive net rating. When Ant is off the court, it's well outside the top 20.
I mean, probably close to bottom 5, I would imagine. Mm-hmm. I mean, maybe not quite that, but I would imagine below 20.
Yeah.
right? So I wonder, right? Because Chris Finch is such a good offensive coach, but we haven't seen that come to fruition. It's a lot of free flow. Maybe there needs to be a little bit more structure. Heck, it would help if Kyle Anderson could make a shot, although I wonder, like he hasn't admitted this, but that eye surgery he had after he took the poke to the eye, the accidental poke to the eye.
You just can't see.
Like,
There's two hoops.
I just wonder, right, if the vision.
Shoot at the one in the middle.
Kyle is not this bad a shooter.
Yeah,
to
it's
make
weird.
1 3 over the course of a month?
Yeah.
What is he shooting from three-point range? 12%?
It's really bad.
But even his 2-point shots, I know Kyle's a better shooter, and I know he's not out there to score, to shoot the ball. It's his passing, decision-making, it's his defense, right? But, like, that one is weird to me, so that doesn't help the offense. But I worry a little bit about the trend we have been seeing with the offense when I know that Chris Finch is such a good offensive coach.
I'll let our mutual friend Craig Kilborn have the final word on this. Coincidentally, he literally just sent a text 5 minutes ago when we started this discussion and said, "We need a third scorer, just so you know." ... So, and he's right.
Well, I mean,
is Jamal Crawford still available? Who can we get to come in here and microwave some offense?
Jamal's in phenomenal shape. In fact, that's a good reminder. I want to get him on the podcast soon. But like I was watching, don't ask why, but I got home late last night. I flipped on Detroit, Utah. It ended up going to overtime. And I was watching Bogdanovich for Detroit, right? And you think about the chemistry he has from Utah with Mike Conley, with Rudy Gobert. I don't know how you get him. It's a lot of money you probably need to part with. Kyle Anderson, would Finch really want to do that? You want Kyle Anderson, I think, for the defense and the decision-making in the playoffs, right? But to make the money work, I think you would have to part with Kyle Anderson, plus more. Like, you probably need to give up a Leonard Miller, who last night for the Iowa Wolves, 35 points. Like, you watch clips,
6
and I get it.
assists, too.
Clips don't tell the whole story, but Leonard Miller can play. Like, to me, he's a rotation guy as soon as next year. And, hey, don't forget, he played for the G League Ignite last year. So he got G League minutes last year, played well. So, like, I'm not surprised he's dominating in a second year in the G League. Yeah. But, like, you probably need to part with a guy like Leonard Miller if you're getting Bogdanovich. But, like, you think about the possibility of a Bogdanovich helping this team. I mean, to answer Craig's inquiry, I mean, that to me would be the guy more than just about anybody who's realistic, even though I still think it's tough to acquire Bogdanovich.
I'm going to text him.
He would be the guy.
My idea is Bogdanovich.
Bogdanovich. I'm going to give it to Dukes. Bogdanovich.
Although, say Duke says it's not the easiest trade to actually complete. But, like, I think Detroit ends up moving him. But, like, I think a Monty Morris from Detroit is more realistic. I mean, I think Tyus would help, but I don't think he's, like, the ultimate scorer. But Tyus is a good three-point shooter. Heck, he's not going to turn the ball over, right? So assist-to-turnover ratio. We talk about Ant, needing to take that next step. And he's 22, right? I can't wait to see Ant as a 25 or 26-year-old. But to truly be one of the 10 best players on the planet, he's not there yet. That assist-to-turnover ratio has to be better.
Yep. He is getting to the line more, which is good. Mm-hmm. It's like 10 attempts per game I think it's more than that, the last 5 or 6 games.
Well, and it may even have to be more at times, right, if he gets the whistle, although I don't think the officials really like Ant right now. Too much clapping at them. He has to control himself.
Yeah, he got himself teed up.
But, I mean, to me, it's Bogdanovich, right? I mean, I don't know what he ended up finishing with last night, but Bogdanovich on any given night can get you 25 to 30, right? I mean, he can make 6 or 7 3-pointers. Right, so to me, of logical guys, that would be the guy.
I love it. Hey, we got to run here. Give us like a minute of whatever you have left in your rapid-fire scoops pouch, Dukes.
Yeah, so Dorian Singer, good receiver, had a good run at USC this year with Caleb Williams, was at Arizona before that, played at Tartan High School. So that's the local connection. He is in the transfer portal as of about 48 hours ago or 24 hours ago. Anyway, the Gophers have interest, but I think it'll be a tough get for the Gophers. I know Penn State also has interest, as does California. Fun times at the X on Saturday with the new women's professional hockey team. Why they don't have a name is beyond me, but things are trending toward them setting an attendance record. I know that they sold some tickets coming off last night into this morning. The record was just set, a couple days ago in Ottawa. So they are looking to exceed, 7,700 people or 8,000 people. 8, but anyway, they've already advance sold 7,500 tickets. So they are on their way to setting an attendance record in St. Paul on Saturday afternoon. So good times. Our mutual friend Joe Anderson doing some work with that team.
It's
so
time
love
for
the fact
Judd
that Mr.
and
Fun is having some fun.
Yep,
it's time for Judd and Fun. We're talking sports because we know it's fun.
No, a ton.
Know a ton?
Know a
Okay.
ton. And we're talking sports because we know a ton. Please get the lyrics right.
Sorry.
I play it on loop every day. I walk around the house.
And then
Amazing.
congratulations, Judd. You get your wish. The World Junior's coming. The official announcement tomorrow. I think Jess Myers, our mutual friend, had the initial scoop. But
great
we'll get the
scoop by
official
Jess.
announcement tomorrow. XL Energy Center, Mariucci Arena, 3M Arena at Mariucci starting December of 2025. But look for that formal announcement tomorrow.
Boom.
And
There he is.
quickly, some games elsewhere as well around the state. The preliminary round is going to be played around the state. So we might dip into Duluth, Little St. Cloud. We don't know yet. Very exciting.
Yeah.
Should be good. Yeah, I know you're loving it. So, yeah, absolutely. Have a wonderful weekend, boys.
All right.
Bye,
See you,
dudes.
dudes. Darren Doogie
Okay, see ya.
Wolfson every Tuesday and Thursday here. A little reckless speculation Thursday for you guys today. Over on Purple Daily, we will dive into quarterback's been a big topic this week on Purple Daily, but there's one other major thing with the offense that they absolutely face planted on that we need to talk about today. That's on Purple Daily. See you guys.